Now we would like to open to the floor and welcome to everyone in this room to raise your question. I think we are welcome both of in English and also in Chinese. Okay, we have a very excellent interpreter here. Okay, from the National Open University, Professor Huang. Okay, so welcome also in Chinese. Right now we can have about 10 minutes here. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Professor Liao, and then we will have Professor Hong. Yeah. Okay. Please.
Good morning, Dr. Redburn, and Mr. Jan, and all discussants, and good morning all participants. I'm Zopen Liao from the Department of Administration, and I'm an assistant professor of National Open University. I have a question I want to ask Dr. Redburn about the open information strategy in the government. We know there is not only information asymmetry between the expert, government expert and the citizen, but also there is knowledge asymmetry between them. So what I mean is the expert knowledge and the citizen knowledge, there exists a gap between them. So after we, even the government open all of their information to the citizen may not have enough abilities to realize the government information. So my question is, how can we use enough, or how can we use the proper approach to erase the gap between the government expert and the citizen? That's my question. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. There is a wide gap between expert opinion and knowledge knowledge of average citizens that has always existed, and is certainly larger today on many of the most complex public policy questions that governments face than ever before. That problem can be addressed, I think, through the use of this kind of technology, especially the collaborative process that I described. It can never be erased, to use your word, but I think the gap has to be reduced. After all, we expect citizens to participate in the choice of their leaders. We expect them to express their views on these complex questions. So the real practical problem is, what do we do to make sure that their engagement is effective and informed from their point of view. The kind of process that we've been talking about, and I'm happy that we share a common normative position on this, even though we also all recognize there are complexities here, that enormous challenges that have to be dealt with, both practical and political. The collaborative process that I described, I think, helps close that gap in two ways. One is, in an engaging way, in an interesting way, in an easy way, it allows people without a lot of expert knowledge and technical background to interact with the data, pose questions, to learn from each other about the data, so that the more informed people in the group can talk to other people in the group, and also to engage with experts to the extent, and they can take the initiative. That the experts are not just coming to them, but they're going to sources of expertise because they want to, in this forum context, in this collaboration, they want to be able to participate effectively, and they know that, and most people recognize they need more information and more analytical expertise than they have personally. And because it's an engaging process, people will stay engaged for longer periods of time around issues that they're most concerned about, and they will become much more effective citizens as a result. So I see this as a tremendous opportunity to allow people to not only participate through voting, but to learn and become more effective as citizens, and therefore realize much more profoundly the meaning of democracy. Sometimes we associate democracy with very simple mechanical exercises like voting, but the real essence of it is effective personal engagement of citizens, a representative cross-section of citizens in the process. So it's a very important central challenge, but I think the process we're talking about is directly addressing that challenge.
Thank you, Thaddeus. Also, thank you, Professor Liao, raised this very important questions. And these questions also remind me about the nuclear policy right now, right? That's that's why the beginning of this forum I mentioned this subject is a hard issue in Taiwan right now, because we have nuclear policy, and it's really like there is a serious gap between the government information with the citizen. So I think, yeah. So I think maybe government can provide more information to bridge the gap between the government and the citizen. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, but I want to distinguish between the traditional method of the government sending the information out to the public that it thinks the public needs, and perhaps in the process distorting some of that information, and a process where citizens reach for information and there's an open door so that they can get access to the data, the information, the knowledge, the expertise that they want to use in order to inform themselves and advocate for their views more effectively. So it's a different process.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, please, Jie.
I would like to make some compliments to the questions that Dr. Liao raised. I think right now the issue of the nuclear power planet are meaning about two difficulties. Number one, most people, they say they need power, but they don't want have the power planet in their backyard, not in my backyard. That's the one difficulty. The other difficulty is that even the experts have difficulty to explain to the public what is the nuclear power. Is that safe? And how can we translate or transform the technical terminology to the public? It's very difficult. So I have written an article in newspaper to talk about the problem of information transparency, and also how the experts of the nuclear planet to communicate with the public. That's very difficult, in Taiwan. So I think maybe we can learn from your case.
We learned from the recent experience in Japan in the wake of the Fukushima disaster, where there was a failure to communicate, and people were not necessarily informed, but they became deeply alienated from the government and no longer believed the messages they were receiving. And the consequence for the government, which was in a defensive posture, was that it was defeated. So the alternative for leaders who choose not to open up and to engage the public and try to inform the public and close that gap of expertise and knowledge, even on the most technical issues, is disastrous in a democratic process. Disastrous for the leaders, that is, and not helpful to the public.
Okay, thank you. Next, we would like to invite Professor Hong.
Dr. Stephen Redburn, I'm Hong. I have a question. From your PowerPoints, we can find the Maryland state stand. So you know, Maryland is a state of the United States, right? Near the Washington, D.C. So Maryland is a local government not the Washington D.C. It's the central government. So, do you know the whole United States? Would you like this one Maryland stand, this delivery system, like you show PowerPoints, the 15 goals? And do you come from the Australia? You come Australia?
Visiting professor.
Right now I'm in Australia, but I'm
ordinarily
I live in Washington D.C., which is right next to Maryland.
Carnegie Mellon University is
in Adelaide, Australia. It has a public management graduate program there, which is where I'm teaching this semester.
That's off the campus for Carnegie Mellon.
No. Oh, really? Oh, I want to know Australia. How about Australia government?
I teach that as well, and there's a long history of the use of performance information in the Australian government, and it's gone through cycles. I said this is a long twilight struggle, and in Australia there was a long period of time when there was a lot of emphasis on evaluation of programs and the use of performance information in their budget and management processes, and then there was an interval where that fell away and it was de-emphasized. During the most recent conservative government, or liberal government in their terms. And then the new Labour government, relatively new still, has brought back some of that technique and technology. So this goes in waves. And each wave there's learning and rejection of some things that were done in the past wave, and then a new set of developments. I see this as a continuing learning process.
Okay. Like Maryland state tap, it's everywhere around the United States, like this one.
Maryland's just one example of this. I think it's a leading example because of the commitment of the governor personally and the way he uses the same information that is presented to citizens to manage his own government. And he's done this for 5 years. He was reelected a year ago, so one of the things we haven't talked about, we should probably pay a little attention to, is the risks for political leaders of this approach, and he's been successful at it. Although it was risky for him to commit to these performance goals, because obviously he's going to succeed on some of them and fail on others, and it's highly visible failure when he fails. He was willing to take that risk. Most governors have not done this. There are some other states, Virginia, others that have had similar kinds of websites over some period of time with a governor that's interested in this way of managing. But it's not uniform. There are 50 states. I just showed you one state that I think is a leader.
Okay, this one is very important. I want here in Taiwan, we have this one, like this way, to linkage the government and the citizen to communicate. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we also wish we can have a less system in Taiwan. Okay, I think that will be improve our democracy in here much more. Yeah, thank you. And any other question, please? Yeah, okay, please, Professor Huang.
That's a question, yes. I'm impressed by your talk, and especially, the things happened in Maryland. But I'm just curious, have you done any research from the Congress or the state Congress side? Are they for or against the idea? Because to me, it is easier, can be interpreted as a by-step of separation of powers, especially in the United States. So how about their views, especially the representatives in the states? Thank you.
I think that's a very good question about the legislative branch. And as you, I'm sure, know, the U.S. And most of its states, there's a competition or division of authority between the legislative branch and the executive that doesn't exist necessarily in a parliamentary style system Australia would be one example of that. UK Westminster-style government, where there's the government is also the majority always in the parliament, and so there's not this conflict or wrestling for power between the two branches. In the U.S., in order to make progress on this or any policy front, there has to eventually be some agreement between the two branches and taking the form of legislation that the president signs, Congress passes, and president signs. In this area, at the national level, surprisingly, even amidst all the intense political conflict, which I know you're familiar with political conflict from Taiwan, between two opposed parties that are closely contesting for control. There was an act passed in December 2010 that updated the legislative framework for use of performance information, which is called the Government Performance and Results Act, GPRA. This is called the GPRA Modernization Act. And it was the result of a collaboration behind the scenes between the staff of the president and the staff of the leading both Republican and Democratic, the two-party leaders who are most concerned in the Congress with this framework to compromise on a new, more advanced way of approaching this. So there's, despite all the conflict on big issues, this is the kind of good government process issue that seems to be able to continue. Having said that, Congress as a group, on average, is much less interested than the executive branch in the use of this kind of information. The kind of performance information they're interested in has more to do with the constituency they represent, the state or the small district within a state that they represent, and its interests, economic interests, especially the interests of the large donors who contribute to their campaign and re-election. So they're just not that interested, for the most part, in this way of governing. It's not traditional. And I think we have a long way to go with the Congress and with state legislators, on average, to engage them more effectively in using performance information in the way they make decisions, where they legislate, and the way they oversee the executive branch. Long answer, but I think you're hitting on something very important.
Okay. So by the way, so as your opinion, for Congress, that we can see the citizen engagement as the additional approach to also increase the participation from the civil society. That will be originally there is just one way, that's from the representative from the Congress. State Congress, but the citizen engagement will be another way, additional way to improve this, right? That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Welcome. Some more question? Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah. Please introduce yourself first. Mm-hmm.
各位老师好，抱歉，容许我用中文发问，麻烦你。OK，我是政治大学公行系博士班的学生，对。那听了刚刚教授们的讨论，那有几个问题想要请教。其中第一个问题就是刚刚有提到说，这个领导者他放很多资料在网络上。那也说到，也有提到说，其实他这个行为是充满了很多的危险，因为他有可能很多的目标是达不到的。那身为一个领导者，他为什么，或是身为一个政治人物，他为何可能去承担这个风险？这是第一个。那第二个问题其实是蛮简单的，就是今天讨论的是公民参与。那其实参与的话，今天谈到的都是管道的问题啊。我们有很多的工具可以，或是有很多的形式可以参与。可是呢，究竟是要参与政策的哪个阶段？要参与什么？比方说我们现在可以看到说，在网络上有很多人对核能政策、核废料或者是核四的一些问题，都会提出一些个人意见。可是呢，它毕竟还是一种舆论而已。那这样的舆论也算是参与吗？那接下来就是我们想要请教，就是说，那公民的参与跟这种绩效之间的关系，我们要怎么去看到？ 民众的意见出来之后，我们如何去了解说，官僚体系或是政府部门的领导者，他可以接受。那接受的话，我们如果去测量它之间的关系是真的存在，因为过去参与了几个研究案，那也是做审议民主的一个研究，那就是蛮多的受访者，政府部门的受访者就是说，民众的讨论这些东西，其实我们以前都有这样的想法，只是顺势的，都要推动出去。那这也显示说，我们根本不晓得说民众的参与它实质的效果，如何去观察到。以上，谢谢。
I'm going to translate just, roughly. And he is a doctoral student from National Zhengzhi University. And I think he has got 3 questions. The first one is about the information risk, because the governor O'Malley decided to put the old information online, and he wants to know why he made this kind of decision, because it is dangerous in some way, and then, you know, it backfires easily. And secondly, he wants to ask about the participation, especially in which step, you know, we get people, you know, to participate in the decision-making process. Yes. And finally, he wants to ask about how to measure, you know, this kind of participation. Is there a specific way to measure it and to, you know, to know the gap and where's the gap? It's a roughly translation. Sorry about that.
So the first and last, I think, are related. There are great risks, as I said, for a political leader to use this approach with the public. Governor O'Malley governed, as was indicated, he governed first at the city level as a mayor in Baltimore, and he chose this method because he'd seen it at work in New York City, in the area of the police and criminal justice, and been effective, and he wanted to be effective as a mayor in delivering services. So he felt this would be an effective way of governing, and I think it was a personal choice, not so much, or certainly not entirely a political choice, to take those risks at a city level. He had success at that level. He was reelected. He went on to be governor, and as I said, he was reelected as a governor. So perhaps because he was successful, he continued to use this approach. I think it is risky. It's risky for someone in a position where there's a lot of pressure from political opposition. He's been fortunate in that he's had strong majorities at the. He's had strong support, and he hasn't faced quite the same level of strong opposition that, say, President Obama faces from the opposition. So I don't want to minimize the political risk, and I think most politicians who are not schooled in this approach shy away from it, and I think that's going to slow the adoption of this in other places. But the ultimate measure of the success, I think, is that leaders adopt it, use it successfully, and are reelected. That's the ultimate measure. I can think of a lot of more direct short-term measures, but that's the real test. And over time, they will be reelected if they use this effectively to close the gap between government and citizens and to actually improve the results that government delivers that people experience in their lives. That's a long answer. Do you need to translate that, or is that good? Do we communicate? Okay. Okay. The question of at what steps people participate, I think maybe some of my colleagues would want to comment on this. As I tried to suggest, there are many different ways you can design this, and there are different points where citizens can have an opportunity during the development of policy as well as the implementation of a policy. And in the latter case, I use the term co-production, which is a common term, meaning that citizens, because of the way the policy is designed, can make choices after the policy has been put in place. So the policy itself gives them more opportunity to choose, as with the housing voucher holder who can choose where to live, where to rent. They're making a political choice that's best for themselves and very directly. But maybe my two colleagues would want to comment.
就是说这个 Dr. Redburn, he mentioned about, which states should the citizen should be engaged in the public policy process. 他就是说呢，就是说其实这里面就是有一种就是在不同的阶段有不同的考虑，完全是看议题的性质。那有些议题呢，像大部分的性质是在政策执行的时候，比如说在拆迁的时候就问一下，就是说，这个里民大会这个政策执行上面，那有些是在政策执行，就是 policy formation 的时候，就政策制定的时候呢，就先这个广纳民意，先让民众来参与，就是政策制定的时候。那有一些政策是比较适合是在政策执行的时候再来听取这个 stakeholder 利害关系人的意见这样。他说这个要看，有些时候是取决于这个 leader 他的那个 political choice， 他的政治决定，就是在什么时候让民众能够参与呢？就有些时候是要一点智慧的这样。还是。
没有，他刚刚讲的最终的决断呢，其实就是你能不能再重新被选上。然后第一个问题呢，就是当然这个是非常的危险的一个决定，就是把所有的资讯都放在上面。但是那个 Governor O'Malley， 那他那时候做的这个决定呢，是因为他以前在 Baltimore 这个地方呢，他是做市长的时候呢，他试行过这个政策，然后是成功的，所以他就把这个政策呢带到了 Maryland 这个州里面去实行。那当然，这就是连接到最后的那个结论，就是当然他说有很多可以 measure 这个的方法，但是最终的一个决定其实就是他能不能再 get eradicated， 对，这能不能再被重新选上。
As to the citizen engagement or citizen participation to the policy process, personally I would think it should be put the citizen into the policy process as early as possible. It's good way to gain the support from the citizens. Just don't, if you already make a decision, then you say, well, everything is done, and so what citizen can make a change? So I would say so. I would like to ask a question about the Governor O'Malley. If he is going to the President of the United States, would he introduce the idea of the Maryland state to the federal government, and that would be a Fed state? What do you think about this?
I'll tell you a story about that. In 2000, Vice President Gore received more votes than the other guy and was elected president of the United States. Only he wasn't. Something happened, so he didn't take the office. But his staff, as vice president, was very interested in this approach. And I went with them up to the city of Baltimore, where then Mayor O'Malley was using this approach. And I sat with them and watched this process being used at a local level to address a very fundamental question of how to deliver better services. So I actually saw it used with this staff who were thinking ahead to the question of how would President Gore govern. So I think if history had been different and Vice President Gore had become President Gore, we would have had a test of this at a national level already. Even then, there was recognition that there's a big difference between using this approach at a local level or even a state level, where there's direct delivery of services to citizens and very concrete, tangible kinds of services, and using it for national policy. I mean, how do you use this, for example, in national security or homeland security areas? It's a very different set of problems. But there was an inclination to try that, to think about how you could modify it, adapt it. So I wouldn't surprise if Governor O'Malley were to run for president, as he might do, and were elected, he would probably try something like this at a national level, and we would all have to figure it out together, because it would be a different animal at that level.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? yeah, you can grasp this opportunity to ask our distinguished guest here. Yeah, yeah, please, yeah.
Dr. Redburn, of course, I think I agree that the state debt is a leading case in the world. I mean, to close the gap between government and government performance and citizen engagement. However, I would like to ask you, I'm wondering, is that could be duplicated in the world, or it depends the situation of the specific country? For example, in Taiwan, you know, there is a theory of silent spiral. It means that most public, I mean the average citizens, do not understand the specific knowledge or the policy issue, and they don't care. So eventually, some policy issue will be dominated by some specific interest groups or the advocacy groups. So and that would be against the meaning of the public engagement. So what's your opinion?
If there's a national difference, it's a difference of degree, not of kind. That you could say the same things about politics in the U.S. That organized, highly sophisticated interest groups dominate policymaking all the time. This provides an alternative. This and other things provide alternatives to that, where people can participate without having the strong backing of a narrow, well-financed interest. And the Obama administration's used a number of techniques to mobilize broader cross-sections of people and people who've been underrepresented in the process. We haven't talked about that so much because that's outside the domain of this particular set of techniques. But I think your general point is well taken, that this it will be resisted by people who are advantaged under the current arrangements, because most people are disengaged and not informed about what's going on. I think we also have to, although I think we're all fans of this approach, we're all normatively share a desire to see this develop and work. I think we also have to step back and play the role of skeptics and social scientists and say that these are also empirical questions for researchers, people interested in the improvement of government, to look at and say, under what conditions is it likely that a leader will first adopt this approach and second succeed? And what are the conditions that need to be in place, and how would you arrange those conditions? It's a very exciting time to be doing that kind of analysis, because the frontier of what's possible is moving. You listed a number of challenges. The technical challenges, I think, have mostly fallen away or are diminishing, because the cost of computing power and the power of telecommunications technology, as evidenced by what we're doing here today, those technical problems are being solved. It's the political problems and some of these intermediate problems, these legal questions of security and privacy and sharing of data and who owns the data. Those are all very important issues yet to be figured out. So this is going to take many forms, so there'll be many opportunities for good social science research.
Any question else? Okay, if there's no question, okay, please, yeah.
老师好，然后我也是政治大学公行系的博士生，然后刚刚那位发问的是我学长这样子。那我问一个比较简短的问题，就是说，因为新北市，他前阵子我看新闻，他跟IBM 合作嘛，然后他有成为一个智慧型的一个，他目的要成为一个智慧型的城市这样子。然后我想问的比较简单的是说，在新北市政府跟 IBM 他们目的是要强化这个新北市成为一个科技的防卫城这个计划里面，因为它可能运用了就是海量的资料，就所谓 big data 这个东西。然后因为像国外，它可能譬如说从911之后，譬如说我就知道像譬如说芝加哥，或者是说伊利诺，或者是说刚刚Dr. Redburn 他所讲到的巴尔的摩这个地区，其实他们可能运用蛮多资讯 资讯科技来加强这个反恐的侦查这块部分。那我想问的是说，就是第一个问题是说，如何就是公民参与在这个里面的角色是什么？就是说我们要怎么样提高他的参与的程度。那第二个是说，国外在这种譬如说包含了政府企业、政府单位跟企业，还有公民他们这种之间这种伙伴关系的经验，不晓得那个就是经验主讲者，就是他在这方面的经验是怎么样？就是说国外的经验，如果因为台湾可能最近才刚开始推展嘛，这样子，所以他不晓得有什么经验可以提供给我们作为参考，这样子。对，谢谢。
我确认一下，所以你想要问的是说，在新北市跟 IBM 有一个合作，那在国外有没有这样子的合作的经验？然后
第一个问题是说，在这个参与的这个计划里面呢，就是我们公民，就是因为它这跟我们市民的那个生活息息相关，就是说公民到底在这个里面扮演的角色是什么，然后我们怎么样提高他的参与的程度，这样子。对，谢谢。
He is also a doctoral student from National Zhengzhi University, and he would like to ask 2 questions. The first question is, in New Taipei City, where we are now, we are in New Taipei City, and the city government try to team up with the IBM and to have a partnership with the IBM, and he'd like to know what kind of experiences we can learn from the US, if you know. And the second one is about the citizen engagement. How can we improve or get more people empowered and into the citizen engagement system? And that's the second question.
Your first question, how can you get more information about U.S. experience that would inform this partnership between New Taipei City and IBM?
In the private sector and the public sector.
Okay. Actually, there is a group, IBM's a large international corporation, and there's a group within that corporation that focuses on this set of questions, among other questions about government. It's, so you can find their website easily. It's IBM Center for the Business of Government. And if you search for information about performance stat or similar models, performance information, performance management on that website, there are experts in that center who have written extensively about the U.S. experience. Another person who can be very helpful and who has his own website is Professor Robert Bain, B-E-H-N, at the Harvard Kennedy School currently. Bob Bain. And he's thought a lot about this and has generalized and is writing a book on the performance stat model. So I would look at those 2 sources. So that's very practical help on that question. Dr. Buss and I, who collaborated on this book called Modernizing Democracy, thought a lot about this question of how you get more citizens more effectively engaged. And I think one of the keys to this is designing these interactive processes in ways that are more engaging to people who aren't inclined to go through the kinds of academic or governmental processes that we enjoy so much, to make them more game-like, to make them more generally more user-friendly and engaging. So that's a whole area of the application of information technology that I think is very rich and wide open. People are creating budget games, for example, in the U.S. to help ordinary citizens figure out where their interests lie with regard to the fiscal challenges facing the United States, or a particular locality, could be a city. Do you want to translate?
Okay.
Okay.
他基本上提出了3个非常有用的这个资讯可以让我们来参考。第一个呢是在 IBM 的这个网站里面有一个叫做 IBM Center for the Government, a Business for Government of Government。那这个网站呢，那它提供了非常多的资讯，然后有很多的文章，然后可以了解到一些美国的经验。那还有一个呢，就是 Robert Bain from Harvard， 在哈佛大学，然后是 B-E-H-N Robert Bain 这个教授，那也可以到这个地方去看。那另外一个呢，就是他的 co-author 叫做 Dr. Buss， 然后呢，他也提供了很多，希望能够提供一些 user friendly， 然后一些比较像是在玩 game 的这样子的一个模式。那这是3个主要的这个地方可以去参考美国的经验。OK。
Thanks for all of our audience here to raise the questions. I think this may, according to time, maybe this will be the last opportunity that we'll give to myself. Okay, it's okay. Yeah. When I accessed Steve, your VTI here, and I know recent years you do a lot of the survey and the research on the budgeting and the immigration. I just so interested by this subject. I even cannot imagine how these two subjects can relate to each other. You know, can you take this also opportunity to our students and our audience here, please? Okay. Yeah. And also to me.
All right. Yes, as in one of my jobs, in my spare time, I had directed a study of budgeting for immigration enforcement. And the challenge was given us by the Congress. They gave money to the Department of Justice and the executive branch and told them to use it to study this question of how to improve estimates of resources for that system. We spend a lot of money in the U.S. trying to control our borders. So it's a big budget issue. And the responsibility is divided between 2 major ministries, Homeland Security and the Justice Department, who have to collaborate effectively if they're going to effectively administer that set of programs and that budget. And we found that they weren't talking to one another about performance, which relates to our subject here today. And so the National Academy of Sciences provided them with a number of recommendations on how to improve that budgeting process to make it more effective, to make it more of a collaboration between the 2 departments. Same thing in the Congress. So that's the narrow answer to your question. There's a broader question of what is the impact on the budget and the economy of immigration. And as you know, the U.S. is a country built by immigrants, largely. And it's been tremendously enriched by the flow of immigrants from all over the world, and still is. And they are instantly productive. They work. Often they work at jobs that other people will not take, and they don't necessarily receive all the benefits that other workers receive because if they've come illegally, they're not eligible for those benefits. Although their kids are, they may go to school. So there's a complex set of analytical, empirical questions here about what is the net effect of all of that on the U.S. Obviously, the long-run effect on the U.S. of immigration has been tremendously positive. It's given us sources of innovation and economic growth that we couldn't have had otherwise. And it'll be even more important as our population ages in the future and the workforce grows more slowly or actually begins to shrink. So it can be tremendously beneficial. In the short term, it's a more complicated question. There's some costs and there's some benefits to the economy. And the National Academy of Sciences in the past has looked at this question and found that on balance, it's beneficial economically and financially to the government to have people come into the country. But that's, as I said, there's a lot of questions about that, and so I think the Academy will be looking at that question again, probably in the near future.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much. Anyone also is interested for this subject, you can refer to Dr. Redburn's the new books 2011, published by the National Academist Press. The title is, it's like advertised, right? Yeah, the title is Budgeting for the Immigration Enforcement. Okay, so yeah, online also, okay, free, okay, so everyone can try to also access this, okay? One more question. One more question, yeah? Oh, okay, please, yeah, please, very good.
Okay, let me think about it a little bit. I think that citizen engagement is a good thing, and that
make government can hear more voice, and that we get more people to scan the horizon, like you said yesterday, to see the future crisis. But I think the decision making better let those qualified people to do that. So come back to the Maryland's state. In that, the governor have 15 goals. In some cases, if some citizen have some opinion, or they feel that 15 goals is not enough, they have some ideas, then how they can get the idea to shape this the governor's goals. I mean, is there any Maryland's case how citizens' opinion can translate into the policy? Is that the same procedure? And also, how often that website is updated? If in many cases the website is keep all there like all day or all years long, not the same data, all data. That's my questions. Thank you.
Have all the traditional means still available to them to talk to their leaders, communicate with their leaders, including voting. But governments have to figure out ways of taking advantage of the new technologies to more effectively, to allow people to more effectively engage. And as I said, I think we're just at the frontier of this. We don't know where this is going. The Obama administration, for example, has tried to find different ways of getting citizens online to register their views, to petition, for example. They can create an online petition, and if there's a certain number of signatures, then the Obama administration, the White House, will publish its answer to that petition. You know, they'll research it and they'll give an answer. Yes, we can do that. No, we can't do that, and here's why. So that's another technique. Some of these techniques look pretty much like the traditional techniques. They don't take full advantage of the technology. Others are more innovative. For example, the crowdsourcing techniques, where you have a very specific policy problem you're trying to solve, and you challenge citizens collectively to come up with solutions. And the most interesting ideas are voted to the top of the list and then are evaluated more carefully. And many cases, internal to the bureaucracy, the same technique is used. The Transportation Security Administration, for example, the head of that agency asked his employees, the people who check all our baggage and when we go to the airport, all of these people came up with many suggestions for how to improve their work and to make airport security better. And again, they voted as an employee group on these, and the best ideas were adopted by the agency. So many of the changes came from the workforce itself. These are just isolated small examples, but I think there are a number of things like that we'll learn how to do, the governments will learn how to do better to engage citizens. I think there was another part of your question that I've forgotten now. Oh, I found it pretty up to date. I can't answer that specifically, and I'm sure it varies from goal to goal and from agency to agency, but it seems to be pretty current information, so I think it's updated regularly.
Okay, I think because of time limit, and it's about time we have to close this meeting. But before we close the meeting here, and I like to make some point about our meeting this morning. That's some really point from the during this morning. It's really impressed me. Okay, and from Dr. Redburn, from the beginning, he mentioned about the of course, we know the citizen engagement and the performance, the government performance. And he mentioned about the 3 forms to deeper the citizen engagement, like about include the online, cooperative, the forum, and crowding, the sourcing, and the co-production. 3 ways to do this. Especially give us the very interesting example from the state of the Maryland. Fisher, the letter mentioned about the crime rate on the line, and I also attracted by the reading rate from the middle school from the Maryland. That's also very interesting. It's difficult to, to do this kinds of announcement, So this is the base for our discussion. And following this, Professor Li, I really enjoy about you mentioned when we talk about citizen engagement, and you mentioned about that's so closely related to the concept of governance, because the governance, that's a new terminology, but include government and also civil society. So this really excellent point, also remind me. And Jack also mentioned about deficit about the citizen engagement, like the cost and the interesting groups. I think that will be so interesting. From the Professor Zhang, and he also gave some advantage of the citizen engagement, like rich visualization and customized data template, 客制化 的资料, and also the dashboard. I really enjoy the last 2 points. One is a challenge from this citizen engagement, like time consuming and data misinterpretation, and also paradox about this performance, the monitoring and reporting, especially when we sometimes we will get a goal displacement. I think that that's also we should have attention on it. And also, I also like to mention something from our flow. I really enjoy about some question mentioned and discussed about the Congress from the legislative branch with this citizen engagement, because it seems to me also that's like a function conflict. Okay, but we like to also as I just mentioned, maybe we can see that's an additional approach to improve this kind of participation. And also I really also enjoy the from our doctoral candidate, and mention about which stage will be the best time point to ask the citizen participation. I think it's depend on the leadership, depend on the issues, as an answer from the Dr. Redburn. Okay, this is a really nice meeting this morning, and I think everyone enjoyed this meeting. It's a fruitful forum here. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much.